Yo, hello, and welcome back. I'm Ryan Fring, creative director here at Backflip. And if you're listening on the podcast, you probably have heard this twice. This is the second time you're hearing it. But we're hanging out today. It's going to be a blast. John is on a shoot, so we got a ringer. We're bringing Max in. What's going on, Max? How you doing?
Doing great.
Nice. Busy this week? Happy to be drinking with me?
Yes. Very happy to be drinking with you on a Friday. So this week has mainly been a writing week for me. So we're working on a project for Madison College, and I'm working on polishing up those scripts, and it's been fun.
Yeah, that's been fun. I've been working on that today as well. And it's so much fun. I mean, you never know how it's going to get received. We have a meeting next week to kind of review the latest revisions, but what we're having a blast coming up with and figuring out. So it's super excited. But that's not why we're here. We're here to hang out with this woman. We got Laura Gallagher of The Creative Company. How's it going, Laura?
Good. I'm good. It's good to be with you guys. I had so much fun the first time that we met not too long ago at Backflip, meeting you and talking books and ideas. The tour went on without me, so it's good to
No, that's right.
Yeah.
And
I was like, oh, this guy's way more interesting than that. So
we'll hear more about this.
Yeah.
Well, and that's what it's about. It's about connecting with people. And it's fun. I love giving the tours too. I didn't give that one for you guys, but it's so much fun because I don't know, it's more about you guys meeting us and kind of what we do and us meeting you. And it's always a good time. But we've got some good stories too, because we had offices in the same space for many years. And I think we kind of realized it later, we knew it at the time, but fun stuff like that. We'll hear your whole story. But first, this is a happy hour. So I'd like to go through what we're drinking today to celebrate what I'm guessing has just been an awesome week. I had a crazy day yesterday, which maybe I'll share later on, but we were talking about how the week was going. So what do you got? What'd you bring to drink today?
Well, actually, I got some sort of a drink from Panera, a Madagascar vanilla latte, and I've never had this before. It's really good. So
Ooh.
I just needed a little caffeine because it is Friday, and it was one of those weeks actually where I had to be up early for different events. I went to the Beacon and Eggs fundraiser yesterday morning at 7:30, and I had I had to be on something at 8:00 in the morning. I know I did I'm on the Dane Arts Commission. So it's not that big a deal. It was my first commissioners meeting. So I had to get up early on another day and make sure that I was, in my office and looking sharp and awake. So, So, summer is still kind of I know it's October, but this is my season where I definitely get up earlier. And so this week I'm, going to bed a little earlier, getting up earlier. It's nice.
Yeah. Is it a work thing, getting up earlier, or because it's getting darker and that's harder? We want to go to bed earlier. We want to, stay in bed longer.
Yeah, I think it's just just commitments, earlier morning commitments, and people are starting to get together again, right? It just seems like things are almost normal, at least in my world, in terms of events and things like that. So that's nice.
Yeah. No. 100% feel that. All right. What do you got, Max? What are you drinking?
I've got a mango habanero whiskey tonic, which is really good. It's from Old Smoky, Tennessee. So I've seen this on the shelf for a while because we have this big liquor shelf that we never really use. But this gives me an excuse to actually try some of the stuff up there. So I always love a spicy drink. So it's great.
Nice. That does sound good.
Yeah, I was going to say it's true. There's stuff that sits on there for a long time. I have my own behind me, not here, but at the office. I'm at home today because my car exploded. Didn't really explode, but it's in the shop. So I have my own behind me. So that's what I'm typically drinking. But today I'm going to actually go see Black Adam. So in celebration of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, I just want to give him all the money that I can. I'm drinking Terramana tequila, which is actually really, really good. It's my favorite tequila, and it's actually really good. I don't know if you can see the label. Tequila. It's probably a little bright here. So this is really good. It's super sippable. So I've got that today. Got a little bit of that to get it
Oh,
going.
nice.
And I've also got
Nice.
some energy. We've got some Zoa here, right? So this is also a
Yes.
product of Dwayne the Rock Johnson. The new ones actually have his face on it, but I don't have those. So
Wow.
we're good.
Yeah. Yeah. I was about to say we have those energy drinks here. So we're supporting The
Yeah.
Rock a lot.
100%. Yeah, and people love them, which is good. Like I wouldn't have reordered them, but you know, people smash through them, so we're good there. All right. Let's get going. For those of you, Laura, who don't know, can you give us like an introduction? What's your bio? We have that in the post, but how do you describe yourself?
Well, let's see. I am a creative entrepreneur. I love life. I'm the president of the creative company I founded when I was a senior in college and is still running all these years later. And I'm very proud of that. We just won the Dane County Small Business of the Year award. So that was, exciting. And we've won a number of other things, especially over the last 5 years. One of the things that Max and I were talking about before we got on this call was just how long it takes, for most of us to and that's, you're learning the whole time, right? And then I like where I'm at right now, but it's been a lot of years of striving and trying and kind of winning and losing, I guess, or winning and learning anyway, not necessarily losing, just learning. So I like where we're at right now. I was the 2019 SBA's Women in Business of the Year, SBA's Women in Business of the Year winner. And in 2020, I was a finalist for the Governor's Business Plan competition. That was my pandemic project for another idea I have. But mostly I love power of a good story and bringing people together to do something good in the world. That's what we do at the Creative Company.
Oh yeah, I love that as a pitch. How did you get into this type of stuff? Is this something you grew up? Were you, I don't know, making things growing up? Did you come to it in college? Or not a lot of people? I mean, maybe a lot of people dream and like, oh, it'd be so nice to be your own boss. But I think what they don't understand is how much work goes into that to get to the point where you could sustain yourself, where you could actually do it reliably and have a team and do good stuff. And you've certainly put in that time and, have survived the travails. So did you set out with that in mind or
Like
what kind of kicked you off?
Yeah, not bombing. Yes, I wanted to make it through. I wanted to succeed for sure. So I think that there, with all of us, with each of us, there are elements in our younger years that are clues to what we're going to be doing later, right? So being the oldest in my family, the oldest in the neighborhood, or one of the oldest in my neighborhood, sort of a natural leader. So that fits for me to be both taking care of others and also sort of charting the course. So I look back at my younger self and I'm like, okay, who was the one that organized the softball team for the neighborhood, or things like that. Just that was my role then, and essentially still is now. I love to write and I loved words and I love the arts. So all of that plays into what we're doing now. My writing, my dad used to say that I couldn't make a living as a writer. I don't know how you'd make a living as a writer. And so I studied business marketing where I could write and make a living. Now, do I like to write other things? And am I doing more of that now? Absolutely. But it all sort of works together. It's not, you need a lot of different disciplines to be in the creative field, as both you guys know well, because of the work that you're doing. It's not one dimensional anyhow. So you have to study and understand art and video and story and people and how to get things to how to move people towards action. All these things which is maybe more of a sales function, even though you might not think of it as such. So there's a lot that goes into running this kind of a company.
Yeah, that's super poignant. Yeah, go ahead, Max.
So thinking about this is sort of a philosophical, hypothetical, time traveling question, but
oh my gosh, I love that little setup non sequitur. Here we go. Let's go.
Let's go. So thinking about where you are now and the journey that it took for you to get here, and then thinking about your younger self. If you could go back and talk to your younger self and tell them about where you are now, and and how you got there, what do you think they would say? And then, well, what would you say to them, and then what do you think they would say?
I think remind them to be. I'd remind her to be kinder to herself. To maybe not be so hard on herself when things don't go well. To know that it's normal and that's how you learn. I mean, that's part of our culture here at Creative Company now, is this community of learning. It's not everywhere, I know that, but that came from my own, sort of hard knocks along the way. So I tell her to be kinder to herself. And I think she would say to me that, she knew, I knew that I was pretty sure I was going to end up right where I'm at. I knew that I'd do well enough and that I'd make a difference through my work. That was always part of the plan. I think I'd also ask her, I'd encourage her to be more true to herself, and maybe, that the writing piece is the one that I probably struggle with the most, just in that I wish I had a whole lot more time to write. And it's where my passion lies. It's where my, whenever you have free time, like whatever you think about, like just, really changing worlds and communities and individuals through the power of the written word. And then other mediums that can be communicated into. That's something that I love. So I wish that I had more time to devote to that. I wish I would have done more of that when I was younger. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that too. And it's awesome that you knew that about yourself and where you were going, which is pretty unique. I feel like, cause I don't feel like I had that. Like I wanted stuff. Like I was like, I would love to be a coder who sits somewhere and does lots of technical stuff, or I want to be a director, out directing movies and stuff. And now I'm somewhere in between, which is kind of fun. And I love it. John just jumped in. He's usually on board. He had a shoot today, so he wasn't sure if he was going to be able to hang out. So I'm going to bring him in too.
Hey, John.
John, I'm
Hey,
assuming
John.
you grabbed something to drink with Laura today.
I mean, I have coffee at the moment. I could.
Coffee's
That's
good.
what I brought too, actually. So
Yeah.
cheers.
Yeah,
I like
that's
this.
all right.
We brought it to a 50-50 split between alcohol and coffee, so I think we're good.
Yeah, well, I mean, I do have caffeine as well, so there's never any pressure. There's always encouragement.
Well, that's what I like to try to keep in here, is a 50-50 split between coffee and alcohol.
Yeah, I wanted to say too, kind of knowing what you wanted to do, and then getting there. Like, obviously, there's a lot of story there. There's a lot of story and a lot of travails. Was there ever a time when you were going to quit, when you were like, like pivotal moments of like, I don't know if I can do this anymore. I'm going to jump out, or this is just too much, too hard. Cause like you said in writing, like I love writing. I love directing. There's a lot of stuff that I do that's not that. And even my wife the other day was like, you know what, you need to like take a day and just get out somewhere and just write some of those things that you've been intending to write, because your brain and your head and your heart need that. And I was like, it's true.
Yes.
Because otherwise we get snatches of it. Like Max is saying, like we're coming out of a really crazy busy season on a couple of edits. Now we're writing, which is really nice, but it's always a little bit crazy. So yeah, any pivotal points that you can think of?
Sure. Yes. And interestingly enough, that's what brings me back to writing it out. So in 2015, I had been at this for a long time, was it 2015 or 2016? It doesn't matter. Within the last, decade, I hit a point where I just was, 25 years, I kind of achieved some of the things that I'd wanted to achieve, not all of them by any stretch, but I wondered about what would be next or what could be next. And so And I knew that my company needed to be revitalized. And this is something that anyone can do. I wrote a book accidentally. So, and which is a great way to write a book, because you don't have the pressure of thinking, oh, I'm going to write a book, right? Like you can just, you know, how 90% of the people out there will say, oh, I'm going to write a book someday about X, right? And then they've got that pressure of like having to write the book. Just write a page. You know, start somewhere. I mean, you don't have the pressure of the whole book, right? So I started writing these LinkedIn longer posts about just kind of where my company was at, what I wanted to achieve, and set up some goals. And I wrote about the change process very honestly and candidly to my LinkedIn audience, which is pretty sizable, and people loved it. You know, we were sending out these emails about it, and it was a very personal journey too. And at the end of it, I had enough pages, you know, I had over 100 pages that I could easily turn into a book. So I did. And that book changed my life because it reinvigorated everything, right? So, you know, I had always wanted to write a book, but I didn't intend to write this book. But then I realized I have plenty of content. I can publish this book, and the book changed my life. So and I mean, the power of writing your ideas down for anyone. You know, prior to that, we did something called the Imagine Plan. Imagine, if you will, that it's 5 years from now and these things are true. So we were doing this with clients long before I did it really for myself. And, but, you know, same idea, like, what's your vision? What do you want to move towards? How can I help you? How can we help you get there from here? Because the best brands are built from the inside out. No matter how much shoe polish or whatever I put on what's going on, if the shoe itself isn't steady and strong and made of good material, it's not going to support the body.
Yeah, I love the shoemaker example as well. We talk about that too. And, you know, building from the inside out, like being a marketing company and not paying attention to your own marketing or messaging or things like that, right? Doing the self-examination, going through the brand processes you do with other clients, right? Because you're super busy and you're helping clients, you're doing the admin of the business, but it's important to do that marketing stuff too.
It's the worst. We just spent, like, we did this probably earlier this summer where we spent a couple of hours working on our brand, and then the next thing you know, we're like, yeah, we're going to meet again next Friday or whatever, and then 3 months go by and you haven't met again. Right?
Yeah.
You're thinking, we need to pay somebody to do this, because otherwise we're not going to do it. And that's really, you know, where it's at for us. We're doing Enneagram. We just finished doing Enneagram work too. Have you guys do?
Oh, yeah, that's fun.
Yeah, that's super fun. So that's been really helpful to our team, which I know I'm kind of moving in a different direction. But yeah, do you guys have? Does anyone here know what their Enneagram number is, or what that is?
What am I, like a 7 and a 12 maybe? Like a challenger and something else. I forget. I can look it up. Yeah, we all have done that, I believe.
Yes, we've done a different type of. It's within.
Well, and more recently we did another one, but we did Enneagram maybe several years ago.
Yes.
We've done 5 voices and Enneagram over the last couple of years, and it's really helped us to understand how each person brings something new to or brings something to the organization that we really, really need. And one of the things that we noticed, like I was mentioning to you guys earlier, we just hired someone, and I was like, oh, good, she's a number that we don't have, because we want different numbers, you know, in the mix, essentially different kinds of people with different strengths. So.
Yeah, I think that's so cool to take that and take into account how somebody works and what fills someone's cup, and bringing that into the hiring process, because then you can bring in all these different ways of working and different perspectives, and combine that to create a great workplace environment, and therefore create great work.
Yeah. It's that thing of prescriptive versus descriptive too. And I try to get there with all clients, be like, don't be prescriptive of how we can help, be descriptive of the need. Right. And I feel like sometimes with Enneagram and Working Genius is the one that we just did recently that Max is referring to, which is really great because it talks about what energizes you. Like, what do you enjoy doing? And we found that lots of us do enjoy disparate things, just different things energize us, but there's some overlap, and it's fun to see that, because then when you're figuring out tasks, it's like, okay, this is really going to work more for this person, this is going to work less for this person, and you also acknowledge, but that's something that where they're going to have to step up and still do it because it's their job.
Right.
But then the Enneagram is fun too, because all of these, thinking descriptive, not prescriptive, it's like, well, I'm a challenger or I'm a this, but that doesn't mean that I'm always going to be right in how I behave or act. It just means I do that a lot, or I get energized for it by it. Or that's how I tend to behave. And so it helps us think of how we can work together in a better way. And I like it. It's, I like doing all the things.
I wanted to go back for just a second. Laura, you had mentioned the book writing process and kind of how you came to that. I was curious to know, have you read Creativity, Inc.? Are you familiar with that book?
I have that book on my shelf, but I haven't looked at it in a while. Why? What's good about it?
Well, what reminded me was he's talking about his journey in that company, and how like the goal early on was to do the first feature-length film that was fully 3D animated. And once they had created that with Toy Story, he found himself like suddenly kind of like lost. Like, and it's an interesting thing that I don't think everybody is aware of or prepared for, that can happen to you. Like, you think about pursuing your goals, but like, what about when you have like a really big goal? At least when you're younger, it feels like a really big goal. And then you actually get there, and then you run into that period of time where you're like, okay, I did it. Now what?
Right.
What's my next thing? And you were kind of describing that, but in Creativity, Inc., he discovered that his new passion was finding the sort of hidden roadblocks and hidden problems that would get in the way of their staff and their company succeeding. Just a lot of very interpersonal stuff. I'm just curious to know where you landed. I mean, you wrote the book, but what's the thing, have you found like that new, like if your initial passion was making the successful business, and then you're like, great, I'm there. Like, what have you shifted to as like the thing that's driving you today?
Yeah. What's next after you've made it?
Well, so there's usually some new hill to climb, right? That just sort of shows up, it seems. And you're absolutely right in that there is this letdown after you've done certain things, So we produced the woman's. After I published the book, one of the things that they said at the award ceremony was that, or I'm sorry, I was nominated for the Athena Award. And one of the things that they mentioned from my interview was that I'd always wanted to return to college and just study business, like at an Ivy League, at an elite college, something like that. And it was out there, and I thought, oh gosh, like, what are my chances of doing that? Because I was parenting 2 teens, I was single parenting it. My business did okay, but we weren't doing great or anything where I had money in, getting kids ready for college and all that kind of stuff. So I didn't think I had much of a chance. But then I think because it was out there, I got a scholarship, a $50,000 scholarship to go back to school at Babson College. I mean, it didn't just land in my lap, but it kind of ish did. I was part of a Milwaukee cohort with a Harvard program in the fall of that year. And then the following year, in the early part of 2017, I went back to school, and they flew me out at the beginning and the end of the program. It's just like 16 weeks. So it's meant for entrepreneurs like me who are already in business. Average age of a scholar is 47. When I finished that program, or when I was in New York for graduation from the other program, I went to the United Nations to an event that was happening, and that led to me becoming an ambassador for Women's Entrepreneurship Day. So then in the fall of 2017 and 2018, that's when I produced these big conferences here at the Monona Terrace for women. And I paid for it. I backed it too. So that was like kind of the next hill to climb. Are you tracking? You know, and then eventually, like when the pandemic hit, so after the second year of the conference, my mom got really sick and passed away unexpectedly. So a lot of things shifted. But then that summer, my landlord came to me and said, "Hey, Laura, I don't want you to worry about anything, but I'm going to tear down this building and that you've been in for 5 years, that you like, and build a new building. But don't worry about anything. We'll figure it out." So that was right before the pandemic now. And so that was like the next hill to climb, right? Where you are dislocated, you got to move into another location. We moved 2 weeks before the pandemic started into temporary space, which was hard to find before the pandemic, plenty of space after the pandemic, and stayed there for 15 months, and then moved back into this space, which is now a brand new 5-story mixed use building in downtown Madison. And it's gorgeous, you know, so, but we did a build out and all those kinds of things. So it just seems like I finish one thing and there's another new challenge. So there's another new thing to do. And right now, I guess, I don't know. I mean, I'm probably more focused on my own personal goals. Company's doing well. We just want steady increases, making sure that during the pandemic, I really felt like I had to put my arms around everybody here. It was very much like from my perspective, it was taking care of employees and taking care of clients. And it was more of that, more of everything, because people were just scared. I think that's the best way to put it. People were just scared. And so there was a lot of that, a lot of putting around other people, putting my arms around others, and not necessarily, I need some time for me now too.
Mm-hmm.
Take care of me. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's interesting kind of to bring up as well. Like there's always something coming up. There's always something to address and handle, and thinking about the focus there. And I guess it kind of comes into that, like the work-life balance, which is interesting because sometimes people say, you know, don't mix business and pleasure. But if you're in our business, like it's all intermixed, right? Like I had 2 1-hour phone calls yesterday with clients who are also friends. So maybe half of the phone call was business. The other half was just catching up and how are you doing type of work. But then it's interesting, like thinking about goals too, because there's obviously like business goals, but then the business goals are also somewhat personal. Like for us with COVID, when COVID hit, it was like, I don't know, a week or 2 in, and we had a management meeting, Zoom, you know, whatever. And we were like, this team is the best. Like, let's do everything we can. You know, we had no idea what was going to happen. We're like, we have 6 months of editing that we have kind of in the tank, right? We have this much business already. If business doesn't keep coming, you know, here's the steps that we're going to take to keep the team. Like, we'll take pay cuts. We'll do things before we do anything that has to, you know, mess with the team. And luckily, you know, people adjusted and digital marketing got a little crazy. And we were able to supplement in other ways, and it turned out really, really well. But, you know, that was an instance where like that personal and that professional really overlap too. Cause we're like, we don't know what this is going to be like. We don't know what, you know, opportunities anybody has, but we have a business that can make this work in a certain way if we take that approach. And then we were able to, you know, get through it, be stronger, do well through it. You know, there's a lot of things that weren't great, but there's a lot of things that we had to figure out and ended up making great through it. And it just kind of comes back to that point that you're making, where there's always a new thing, a new challenge. But I'm just curious too more about the intermixed nature of what we do. Because I was talking to somebody yesterday and they're like, yeah, 12-hour shift and I go home and I don't think about it. I'm like, that is not my industry at all.
No, it's not. It's not. you brought up you were lucky that you had 6 months in the pipeline. You know, we have ongoing contracts or retainer agreements in our business too. But that second quarter going into the pandemic was our worst. You know, it really was bad. And, you know, it was a scary time. And I just think that, you know, it's interesting how businesses and business owners responded to that. You know, I chose to just, I know because of the crisis communications training I've had. So I'm certified in crisis comm. My background in my power, my superpower is in public relations. So, you know, so I just pulled out some of those tactics, which is, you know, we get to decide what happens next. And I'm not giving my power and control over to anybody else. We're going to do whatever we can within our own power to make sure that every client experience is good, to make sure that we're taking good care of each other, you know, stay focused on, like, it gave me an opportunity, quite frankly, to focus on the build out more, because I wasn't at every, you know, luncheon, breakfast, dinner thing that, you know, PR people are supposed to be at. So it was actually,
that was a nice feature.
It was.
Yeah.
I called it the perfect storm. I mean, it gave us a chance to, and it gave others a chance too. So it was, you know, suddenly we were getting branding projects or a new name project or a new logo. Like, people were just like, oh, well, I've got some time to think about this now. Let's work on it. So I thought it was kind of nice in a way. And then I had been a judge and a sponsor for the governor's business plan competition. Are you guys familiar with that? Oh, that competition with the Wisconsin Technology Council?
I'm not.
No.
Yeah, so they award thousands of dollars of prizes every year. It's a bipartisan kind of thing. The Wisconsin Economic Development Department and the Wisconsin Technology Council put it on, and I had been these things, so I'd watched a lot, and that was my pandemic project. So when we went into the, like, I guess the full calendar year, the following year after we had moved, I thought, you know what? I wonder if I could win that competition with a new business idea I had. And it's a publishing company. And so I just started to, you know, I started to enter, and I had friends of mine who entered too. And I'm pleased to let you know that I kept winning, right? Like, I kept winning. I won all the way. Like, there's 5 rounds and I got all the way to the end. And I thought,
That's awesome.
yeah, she still got it. You know what I mean?
So cool.
Like, it's like, I was pretty proud of the fact that I made it all the way to the end, and I was in the top 3, and the other 2 were already in business. So I was, I was very, very pleased with that endeavor. That was fun. And I think that's the thing, is that, you know, you may not always get a great economy or a great, or like the perfect team around you, or, you know, whatever the things are that make you successful. So what else can you do? You know, pivot, right?
Yeah, and it's that next challenge.
It's encouraging to hear you, you know, muse about thinking about, you know, yeah, she still got it, because it's that, you know, like, with a company named like the Creative Company, it reminds me of a Brian Regan joke where he's talking about the audience being like, all right, come on, funny guy, give us something funny, make us laugh.
Yeah.
You know, like, people show, and it's like, all right, you're creative, do the creative stuff, give me the you know, and you at times have to, like, fight that imposter syndrome, even still today, where you're like, am I still creative? Do I still have the ideas?
Well, I think that was more from the business perspective. I know what creativity is. And actually, I haven't had anyone say that to me in a good, you know, 15 years or something. And that client was fired. So, because, you know, it's just, you were so fired.
Nice.
No,
Yeah.
In my circle, because we just inherently are. First of all of us are creative. I believe that all of us are born to be creative, and the world kind of, you know, kicks that out of us on some level if we let it. I don't know about you, but I still get excited when I see a pair of crayons or a set of, you know, box of crayons. I don't ever see a large piece of white paper and not want to do something with it. You know, a big giant Post-it note makes me very happy. We don't draw enough. We don't make enough pictures. We don't make enough art. We don't play enough. I just got a clock at Creative Company that says Ora et Labora, and it means play and work in Latin. It's got to, and when you come here, you know, your backflip is very playful and fun too. it is like that here as well. I have swings in the lobby because I want people to feel like they can just take a minute, before we meet, just relax. And the swings are really fun. They're made in Wisconsin, and they kind of wrap around you like a hug, and all of that stuff's intentional, right? Because and believe me, I was thinking about this. My first office didn't look like that. I had 2 chairs from Goodwill and a desk from a college friend of mine, right? And this woman from Headline, which is a furniture company, a business furniture company, she came into my office, and she was a very tall woman. So she's like 6 feet tall, and she's got her legs out, kind of, like her knees together and her legs out. And she looks around and she goes, "You can't do business like this. We're trading something." When I first started out. And so my Goodwill chairs went away, and I got real chairs and a real desk. There were a lot of moments like that, right, that change your life. You guys are in a business that requires a lot of equipment and things, but I didn't start out in that business. Although Creative Company does video production, we don't have the big studio and all the things that you guys have. That's why we were at your location, to look at what you've got. But you have a lot more of an investment from an equipment side. With me, I could start with a Mac Plus. Seriously, that's what I started with. And, and my ideas, books, marketing knowledge, not as much of a startup cost.
Yeah. And we're kind of coming back to that. It's interesting. Like, we get a lot of clients from traditional agencies, just because of the way that things change every 5 years, every 10 years. Right. And being agile is important. And we got into it in 2008. Yeah. 2000 right. Yeah. What? 2007. Right. Because this is our 15 year. What was that?
I accidentally was trying to share the post and I had audio going.
Oh, nice. 2007. So we got in when you could buy the 5D Mark II, which is a Canon camera that people were shooting commercials on and shooting the show 24. And they're like, wow, this digital camera, which costs, I don't remember, $4,000, you can produce really great images. So there's a democratization of creative. Right. So we were able to get in through that democratization of creative and started heavily in video. Now we also do web, digital, strategy. And that's something we're slowly building, because we also found that, okay, we create this great stuff, but then nobody knows what to do with it. And that's, key. Like, it doesn't matter how great the stuff you create is, if it's not shared well, or on the right platforms or whatever it is. So it's interesting because we kind of have our equipment and our stuff, and really what it is honing in on creative and honing in on strategy that is helping us to grow, which is kind of a little bit backwards from how a lot of people do this, right? Starting maybe more strategically, more agency, and then adding that capability and going back and forth. Like, we also have another client who hires a bunch of contractors. So strategic agency, and they do a lot of great work through contractors. And so I think there's an opportunity for a lot of different models, but I love hearing your story, just to see things that you've gone through, because I feel like that kind of builds me up, builds us up.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about too. You were talking about the right content for the right platform, and just thinking about how there's so many platforms now, and there's so many things demanding our attention, and we have
too much.
Yes,
there's too much. I agree.
Too much, and we've got the real world that's happening around us, but we've got this whole other world that's existing on our phones that's constantly demanding our attention. And then as marketing people, we're just one notification on that phone. And how do we make that thing attractive enough to be like, okay, I am going to take the time and take this attention that I really sometimes don't even have, and devote it to whatever piece of content that we've made.
Yeah, it's so hard now.
Yeah. And that's more of a statement than a question, but it's just, and I guess the solution that that we've found is just making something that's unique and stands out and is fun and funny and bright, and because you've got to be loud, you got to be loud and unique, and because otherwise people aren't gonna click whatever it is. What do you do?
Yeah, it's an interesting, that part of our current reality is a question mark to me. So I don't know where I was at recently, but they were talking about kind of scaling things and growing things. And I said, what if we didn't? I just threw out the question, what if we didn't? What if we made things just smaller and better? What if we had great relationships with all of our
Oh my gosh.
And,
I so resonate with that.
No one ever thinks that, because it's always like bigger, better, more, better margins. But like, what if it's just more concentrated and better as it is? That's interesting.
Yeah. And we actually, I don't know, just, it doesn't, some of the things that are happening in the digital media front, like, there's certain kinds of, I think that some of it can be, like, okay, and I know I'm kind of all over the place, but I'm trying to figure out what I want to really say, which is that
you've basically described the podcast.
It's
That's what we do.
What I really want to say.
Very complicated issue.
Well, we're losing the ability, like you and like the four of us right now, actually having a real in-person conversation, right, in community with each other. This takes more effort in some regards than just sending a text or communicating with somebody on Facebook, right, or Twitter, or showing that you like their Instagram post, or whatever the thing is. You also have the risk of being known, of maybe stumbling over your words, of not saying the most brilliant thing, of starting out the conversation like I did, where I tell Ryan that I'm your guest on your show. And then I started out by saying, like, I really wasn't that interested in the tour. I just wanted to talk to Ryan because he was interesting, but I was there for the tour. I did enjoy the tour, but just those moments of vulnerability, of stumbling, like when we are in these other spaces, we can be who we most want to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's super interesting. How do you market? How do you sell that? Or how do you help somebody understand that?
Right.
Because everyone's like, ooh, I mean, especially when somebody comes to us for like a video, like that's probably the worst. They're like, I know video works. I need a video. And we're like, that's just not a perspective, right? It's not a good perspective. Like a video will not speak all of your brand messaging or, hit all the points. So now we're trying to strategically talk to people about, okay, what does that actually look like? Right. Because we do want some authentic, people absolutely will smell things that aren't authentic. So the fact that, we jump on and we might say something a little goofy, I think endears us to an audience. And so we need some of that. We also need some of the perfect looking marketing. We need some pieces that are shared on LinkedIn that are like super businessy, but also we need stuff shared other places that are goofy and silly and, personal. So just more reflection on kind of what you're getting at, because like, I think with the tour idea, and by the way, flattery will get you everywhere. Like that's what it is for me. Like, even if I was on a tour, I would just be like, well, tell me about yourself. I want to know more. Okay, what's your story? What do you like? And when I meet people, I'm like, what do you do? Okay, we got that out of the way. What's enjoyable to you right now? I try to ask questions that kind of take people out of that comfort zone, because we can get those moments. Because like, I want people to know where you're coming from, but really, like you had mentioned too, like personal goals. Like I want to get to that. Like, what are your personal goals and why are those important? Because that's what shows the uniqueness of each of us. Like you said, we're all creative. Like let's see some of that.
Yeah, let's see some of that. The one video idea, we get that a lot too. It's not going to make an impact. And then having this idea that anyone can do this, like I got the latest, greatest iPhone here, and I'm sure I can make a wonderful movie with it. But that doesn't mean that, but I can also make a lot of other stuff that nobody cares about with it. And that doesn't have any, do this storytelling and creating something that is compelling and that, creates somebody to move in a new direction. It takes a lot of intention, a lot of thought, as you guys know. It's not, yeah. And I don't know what happens next. I also think there's too much of it, and I wish that I could quiet things down in a way, just personally. So I go through certainly seasons where I'm taking apps off my phone. And things like that, because
I feel that
too much.
Right. Well, and how do we do what we do while acknowledging that? Like I like to put my phone away when I'm at home as much as I can, and especially on Sundays. But then part of what I do is like, okay, how do I figure out to be the most interesting thing on all of these devices? It's like this weird headspace, and it's overwhelming.
Yeah, it is. And what does it do to the rest of our relationships if we're looking for, if we're always kind of creating this story that others will view and think certain things about us, right? Like when we all, I don't know, humanity isn't always taking vacations, or, like it's this world that isn't exactly real. So I don't know. The digital world is both compelling and concerning. And as creators in it, kind of what's our responsibility to it and to the people who want to use it as a tool? Because it's also a very effective tool. What's our goal? Are we trying to inspire? Are we trying to draw someone in? Are we trying to convince them to buy something? Are we encouraging them to lead a new story? Like we do a little bit of work in higher education too. And we do a lot of work in nonprofit. So we're, those are powerful stories. Who's the hero? And how many of those things are we seeing that make us feel like we should act or do something throughout the day? How many times are we asked to change something? What's realistic? I don't know. These are big questions.
Yeah. Well, there's, and sometimes you can't win. Like we created this really great project with one of our clients and with community members, and then some maybe vocal members of the community reacted strongly negatively towards it, which is fascinating. They're like, this is not authentic, or, just didn't appreciate the messaging. And we're like, well, this was kind of for the community, by the community, and we help facilitate it. And kind of some of the marketing around it is like, well, let's not share too much and let's try to back off because we're just getting some flack. So we gotta handle this, like the PR, like you're saying, like the damage control. But it's funny because like I feel like if you're putting content out there that somebody doesn't dislike, you're maybe not going far enough. And I feel like you always need a little bit of that, but how much is the right amount? I don't know. Like, cause this is like to the point where it's like, well, we can't share or talk about it. It's like, oh no, it's so good. And people, are brought to tears by it and love it. But it's a tough, weird space to be in.
I think you have to understand the reality of the virtual space and the social media space and whatever, and that it's not fair, but it, like the mass, I can't think of the vocabulary I'm looking for this, but just like the mass population effect, they will decide. And once they've decided and started steering in a particular direction, it's lost. It's not yours anymore. So like if they, and it's the negative connotation of words and things like cancel culture and stuff like that. Like that's a thing that we live with and deal with now. So you really just have to be, you have to be ready to not take things personally, and then have to be ready to like react to like, well, if that piece of media, that piece of marketing or whatever that I put out gets canceled, then then it's canceled. I can't force it back. All I can do is just move on to the next thing and try to pivot, but yeah, it's just, I'm constantly thinking about the thing that I actually, these are heavy, deep philosophical, areas, but is my connection to technology and media and the various platforms. Like, okay, so I'm trying to get a gauge on that and have good balance in my life and give the appropriate amount of attention to my family and my kids and,
Right.
but then I'm participating and I'm creating something to catch more attention and to hold attention. So I'm creating the thing that can be problematic. It's like, I guess it would, okay, there's an analogy. I guess it would be like running a brewery, or like, some people are gonna have very difficult problems in their lives with the product that I'm creating. So,
Oh, that is a deep philosophical question. Yeah, in the early years that I was in business, we didn't buy any trash. So I was buying TV advertising, and we were creating television advertising. And by the way, those were the easy days of video production, because you might do, we worked with a healthcare, one of the hospitals in the region. And, I might do, I don't know, 6 to 8 ads a year, one for the birthing clinic and one for the general hospital and one for the occupational therapist and so on and so forth. And we were done for the year. Can you even imagine 8 pieces of content or something for an entire year? But anyway, when I would place those ads, I wouldn't buy any violent television, places where people were getting shot or killed. And I wouldn't buy any trash talk shows. So, and we did some publicity around it too. It was just my way of saying, if the truth is that if advertisers don't support garbage doesn't air. And that was, my way of handling that. And I think that, throughout my career, it's been a filter that I try to still keep on, what we're doing, where we're placing things, and what we're creating, so that's just one way. And, did my little bit of whatever make a hill of beans a difference in the multi, gazillion dollar advertising world? Probably not. But I felt good about it.
But it did for you. It did for
Right.
you and those around you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because John and I have a good friend who talks about your sphere of influence. Like, okay, company X does something politically, right? Does you not buying company X, when they're kind of a primary store, does that have an impact? Maybe, likely not. However, you have a sphere of influence, like you, yourself, your family, your friends. If you're an influencer, it could be a lot more, but those things that you do, sorry if you're hearing the drilling, we're doing remodeling. Those things that you do, right, can affect your sphere of influence. And that's certainly important. And obviously staying true to yourself is super important, because again, in marketing, people smell when you're not authentic, right? It's such a stupid catchphrase, like be authentic, but it's so true. And I feel like I have to remind myself not to be showy or not myself and be like, yeah, I'd say this, and go out kind of in front of whatever media it is in a way that's authentic. And I feel like people, can resonate with that, and that's how we can do anything. So,
yeah. Speaking of that too, I think that just because something has a small impact, even if you're affecting only your circle or even only one person, that is still worth doing, because it's, that's still affecting an entire life. And if you get enough of enough people thinking the same way and having that attitude and just wanting to bring good in the world, no matter how small, that adds up to a lot, and that can have a domino effect that affects generations. So I just think it's an outlook that I really appreciate.
Yeah, I think that how do you change the world? I'm like, I have a bunch of kids, so I'm going to help them
right
along with their philosophy to be maybe a little bit further along than I was, or maybe a little bit better, or just give them the tools to handle things. And, maybe they'll have a little bit better chance, because that's definitely my sphere of influence.
Yeah, good points.
Let's see. We've also got my guy here, Savadowski Creative, one of my old neighbors and friends. Great conversation and insights. Really enjoy learning. Thanks, dude. Let us know if you have any questions or any other ones from Laura. Now we're getting serious too. The standing is happening. I'm standing right now as well. I love it. I noticed the telltale sign.
Yeah. I just have to move. I have to move. You've probably seen the research that says that sitting all day is like smoking a pack of cigarettes or something. So
yeah.
So after a while, I have to get up.
Yeah.
So as long as you can smoke all the cigarettes you want.
Yeah. Okay.
I love it. That's smart marketing there. Okay. So you had mentioned, Laura, you're kind of focusing a little bit more on some personal stuff. Those are some goals. You have some personal goals. What were you kind of meaning when you were mentioning that?
Gosh. Well, I've actually been interviewing coaches, and should any coaches be listening? I'm good. I've got a lot of coaches in my life, but I have been interviewing coaches, and I've been thinking that I'm going to need a buddy. Like when I went to Babson, the Babson College Entrepreneurship Program, it was structured in a way to ensure that they got a 97% graduation rate. So you had there were 166 in that cohort. There were 47 people in my core group. And then I was in a smaller group of 8, and I had a peer partner and a coach. So, when you think about all those layers, they told us at the beginning, don't question it. It's for your good, like having all of these different layers. And this is kind of how communities break out, how many people you can reasonably know well enough. And that small group of 8 is really important too. And when I think about any of the new things that I want to do, even though I'm, pretty self-directed and can achieve things, like even the competition element, like with the governor's business plan competition, I didn't have a peer partner or a group that was, well, I kind of had my other people who were somewhat involved with the business plan, but mostly it was, pretty solo endeavor, but you've got others who are also competing. So then there is some sort of a loose community there. And what I noticed with my current goals is that, like you guys, you probably, if you're working with clients and you're working with staff, you're waking up in the morning and you can have sort of a reactive day, right? What needs to get done? You're
so often.
Yep. Doesn't happen until later. And, weekends or nights or whenever you actually can grab an hour or two to yourself. It just seems like I'm in that mode all the time, and I need an accountability partner for myself. My staff and I set goals together, and clients set goals, we align, and then we hold them accountable. But then when I have something I want to do, I don't have anyone that is you don't necessarily want your partner, boyfriend, girlfriend, or whatever to, be that accountability.
Yeah.
Somebody else.
Yeah.
So I've been interviewing some coaches, and I think I found one that I'm going to work with now, that I'm excited about. But, personal goals, actually that's one of the first things that she gave me was a list of, some things I want to accomplish and what I'm going to work towards. I definitely would like to be more physically active in the next year, because I just haven't been as much. And I have a gym just down the hall here at Creative Company, so it really isn't like it's not accessible to me. It's just
no excuses.
I have no excuses. And but how do I make sure that I come first, that I get that in? Because what happens is that my schedule ends up filling up with all kinds of other things, and then it's the end of the week and I haven't done anything. So that's probably first on my list.
Yeah.
Does that sound familiar?
Oh, I feel it so much. Like it's one of the nice reasons of working at home or working late at night. I'm like, there's no phone calls, there's no emails, there's no one on Slack late at night, and I can like crank through stuff. And same thing, working at home, the office is great, and you get a lot of great synergy, and like, you know, you can have a random conversation that moves something along really, really fast. But there's a lot of times that things can be interruptive. So then being at home, it's like, well, I have 2 solid hours where no one's going to talk to me. So, you know, I can get some stuff done. Yeah, totally feel what you're talking about.
So there was an interesting thing at a recent American Advertising Federation speaker event. And I was looking for the notes, and I cannot find them for the life.
Also, pro move, bringing that up, president of the American Advertising Federation,
Nice.
Madison.
Nice.
Maybe, yeah. Just a little plug there. Yeah, I can't find the notes, but the speaker was talking about a shift from the work-life balance phrase to work-life integration or something like that. That, like I said, I wish I had the notes because it was better than that. But it was talking about how work-life balance can get a little bit messed up because really you find, and we are the employers, Ryan and I, so like we're not, you know, we know it, but what you can end up having is you can have the employers just kind of, it's more like this, like, oh yeah, well, let's make sure you get enough time with your family so that you can like work incredibly hard, like all the time, and put in huge amounts of hours. And it kind of, it's still, it gets the wrong skew. It gets this like skew of just like, oh yeah, make sure you do that so that you don't just keel over, but I still want like, you know, all of your time and all of your energy into work. And what they were making a case for was finding a way to like integrate it into your life. This has more to do with if you have a flexible situation, if you're able to work from home, if you're able to work remotely or whatever, was like working, I forget her exact examples, but it was, I think it was, she was talking about something about with her husband, I think, and finding a way to make it part of her life so that it's like like the family's goal is like alongside that. It sounded really cool, and I know it's probably, it's not reasonable for everybody. It's not reasonable if you know, work in construction. Maybe it is, you know, maybe, but it was just kind of a cool thing because it reminds me of, and I don't know if this tangent is tied into what you were saying, Ryan, or if it just made me think of that when you were saying it as I'm speaking now. But
yeah, no, absolutely. That idea of like, do you live to work or do you work to live? And
it kind of makes me, well, what it makes me think of, and what I got a taste for that I really want to figure out more, what I got a taste for during working at home during COVID was like, when everybody was farming, we were working like with our families and friends and communities all day long, working incredibly hard, and, you know, not earning as much as people do today. But when we were an agrarian society, like we were close together and working. And now everybody just goes their separate ways, works, and then comes home. And when we say work life, we just try to say, well, can you preserve like at least an hour for me in the evening? Can you, you know, instead of like, can we, and this looks like different things for everyone, but can we, as a family, community, friends, whoever, like, can we move in the same direction together and have that, you know, and it makes it does mean something different. So I don't know how that ties into what you're saying, Ryan. It's just the idea of like, do I need to wait until everybody's asleep in order to work by myself in my basement in order to get something done? Or can I integrate somehow into my family life to be like, they're like, oh yeah, let's be helpful to like, you know, carve out space for you to get that thing that you need to focus on done, you know, in the
yeah. Well, and it's interesting because like what do we do? I mean, we're not farming where it's interesting. Like, what are the lessons we can take and what are the lessons we've learned? Like, we can take, like support and knowledge, right? So knowing what is going on and what is needed is very helpful in a family. Like, when I haven't talked to my wife or the family about what's going on for the week, that's crazy hectic and never works. So the goal is, like, on a Sunday to talk about it and everyone knows the expectations. I can't take the kids in. I'm going to be working all day, or I'm going to be working late, or we have a thing, or I'm traveling, right? The reality is it's not like the kids can come in and, like, okay, that hay over there needs to be over there. And if I'm doing that, I'm not doing something else. I can't be like, I need you to write this script, or I need you to hold this thing. I mean, until they're a little bit older and then they come on set. So there's the different kind of nature to what the work is. But at the very least, the lesson is having everyone understand what the need is and supporting that need in some way. Yeah.
These are the things that I've been thinking about in this stage of my life too. I was called, so about 6 weeks ago, I had a letter saying, 7 weeks ago now, saying that the little church that I grew up in was going to close. And it still may close, but I've spent some time back there bringing my marketing and leadership skills to the table. And one of the things I've loved about it is the community working together for a goal, right? And it's small. So literally, like, we walked around this little town. My friend Cindy, who I haven't had any contact with in 30 years, we walked around this little town handing out flyers to people and just talking to people that happened to be in their yards or whatever that night for a movie night. We did a movie night in the church basement. And it was a movie that would inspire people to, like, what do you want to do with this? And it was about this church that was going to close. And then these refugees show up from Burma and they end up deciding to farm the 30 acres that are there. So to your point about farming, and the whole community comes together to save the church. And they do save the church. Sorry, just kind of ruin that. I didn't tell you the name of the movie, but the point is that we had 19 children show up. We had 31 adults for the movie night. Somebody made a big dinner. Somebody made cinnamon rolls. Somebody made cookies. And oh my gosh, I had the best time. Like, you can't even begin to explain how much fun this was for me. And I also on Monday night, like, went to Vom Foss with Rotary, went to Delectable, and had, a 5-course dinner with wine pairings. Which was fun. That was fun too. But this journey with this little town and the work I'm doing there, it makes me so happy from the inside out. So what is that? And it's because too, when I'm there, I don't have to wait a week to talk to somebody. You can just go knock on their door. Like, you don't have to. You ever do that with your best friends? Like, one of my best friends, it's her birthday today, and we've been trying to find a date together to get together for, a month. And that's just kind of, this life versus these other lives. And I wonder if we're not going to have sort of a rural renaissance, if people aren't going to move. We all left these small towns to go to the city. Will there be some of us who return, especially when we get broadband and, we have some of the tools to these other places where the housing is more affordable and our kids can be safe and, so on and so forth, or at least that's the perception. There's pros and cons of each.
Yeah.
Just wonder, like, as creative people, I need time to rest and play. So when I go there, it's a very creative space for me.
Yeah. Well, and you're kind of getting into that idea of community versus technology a little too. And like, we moved out here into Fitchburg because there's 10 or so families that we know. And so we'll get a text, on a Sunday afternoon or a random evening. And it's like, hey, want a drink? Be like, all right, we're going to hang out for like a half an hour. It ends up being 2 hours, but like, to commit to something like that would be so hard. But you're in the area and there's a different experience, right? Or the kids will just go hang out and then we'll go pick them up. And then we end up hanging out as well. And it's interesting because I'm an elder millennial. almost, a couple more years into the Gen X above me. But we grew up, and Simon Sinek says, and John's the same, I think. Let's see, Max, you're a little bit younger than us. So you're solidly a millennial, but you don't have any of those bad traits. It's great. So John and I came out of school and got jobs before like the 2008 crash. And Simon Sinek likes to say, like, those people have a different work ethic, a different kind of style.
Mm-hmm.
But even so, our tech, we grew up with technology. The internet became something people had, right? So there was a time for us, and time for you before there was internet.
Right.
And we had telephones, and you had to call and you had to talk to somebody right when they called. You couldn't put it, you couldn't screen it. You couldn't text back. You couldn't do any of that. So it's like this immediate communication. Then technology comes, and we have a way to keep community and people at arm's length, to not reply, to whatever, see if we want to answer or whatnot. Mm-hmm. But I feel like now I'm returning to kind of that immediateness of community of like, oh, this is happening, let's go, or let's connect right away, as opposed to screening everything and keeping everything at arm's length. And I have no idea what that means for like, was it Gen Z or the next generation, where technology and communication is so ubiquitous and so different, because kind of that idea you were talking about, it's like, can we plan this thing? I don't know if we're going to be able to plan this thing, but today's the day. Like, hey, can we go hang out right now? There's something to that is unique and special. And I'm sure there's some lesson in marketing somebody can get from here, but more importantly, I think ruminating on community is important.
There's a part of me that wants to go back to when I was 8 years old, and we all decided that we wanted to play softball. Like, we're putting together a game. Do you want to go play softball in the backyard of so-and-so's house? Like, I miss that, and I think the pandemic just sort of brought out how much I want that. I need that. I want to be able to.
Oh, yeah.
Like, just be able to just make it less of to just run into people, to have, like, I ran into my high school
less of an anxiety inducing schedule thing, and more of a not general, but just a random happenstance of like, hey, you want to hang out? Let's hang out.
This is going to be fun and fulfilling. I'm going to go do it. And as a kid, you don't realize how much of a privilege that is, to just be like, I have no obligations. I literally have 3 months where I can do anything I want. And there were times, during that time when we were children, as we all have, where we sat there and we were bored. And thinking about that now, I'm like, I would never be bored if I were in that situation now. I would savor every moment of that time where I could just literally do whatever I want. When a friend called and was like, let's go hang out and, play make believe and just have fun.
But creatively, I feel like we need to be bored at some point. Like,
I do too.
If I don't have something to do, it's like, here's a show, here's a movie, here's this, here's that. So like, that thing that you're talking about, like, how do we get that back? Right.
Yeah. You wouldn't think it would be so hard, but that's what I want. I don't want the long to-do list. I don't want the endless list of chores and obligations that keep me from being in real community with others. I think that's the stuff that makes me really happy. And as a creative person, I need time to wander. And how do you do that when you're a business owner or ridiculously in charge in some other way? You're either taking care of, like, at this stage of your lives, it seems like, I'm a Gen Xer. My kids are both in college. They're both juniors, and they still need me, but not at all like when they were little, right? And work-life balance for me then meant, oh, good, I get to take my kid to work where they crawl underneath the desk while I work. I mean, that was kind of part of it So yeah, we're having like this is a really important conversation though, because I think it's what, maybe it's a couple of days a month that we carve out where we don't have anything scheduled, where we have free time or an afternoon. I mean, that's one of the things I'm looking at as I look at November. I was going to schedule something and I thought, no, I want to leave this time. I want to start blocking off, chunks of time where I'm not scheduled. It just says Laura out of office.
Yeah, and even
God willing, I get to be, because that's the other thing. Like, because I can get called in on some of these things. Other times, I'm actually free to go do the thing I want to do.
Well, I think you even have to be careful to not try to be productive then.
Yes.
In that, because this same wise friend of ours, talking about sphere of influence, was the reason that we muse on these things is he leads this trip to the Boundary Waters like every summer. So I've been there many summers. Ryan's been there once, and it's just a wilderness camping trip. We're up there, and you've got like 7 days, and you're just in the wilderness, and that's like the epitome of just there's nothing to do other than just be in the moment. Maybe somebody's like, I might go fishing this afternoon, but like you're just there. So you have time to think about things. You have time to just do nothing. But he's talked before about like, if you have a Saturday where there's nothing planned and you just kind of sit around and think about doing something and decide not to, and then, watch something and then whatever, you'll end that day feeling not refreshed because there wasn't a specific plan to do nothing. And so your spirit will be like, I didn't achieve anything unless you say like, my plan is to do nothing.
All right.
So, because otherwise, and then if you take a day where you're going to just do nothing and let your head be clear, but then you have plans to be productive, because I have an open Saturday and it's like, all right, well, let's fix that thing that I was going to do. Well, that became a thing that I'm doing, and it'll be good, but it's not the brain space that we're talking about.
Yeah. And I've been working on that personally too, is changing how I define doing nothing, because doing nothing is doing something for your mental health. And you just need to, or at least personally, I feel like I need to carve out that time and be like, no, it's not doing nothing. It's it's recharging, it's rejuvenating my mental state. And it makes me think of this. I don't know who the philosopher is, but there's this story about a tree that grows in a way that it is useless to a lumber yard, can't be chopped down, can't be used for anything, but it is useful to the tree because the tree is living, the tree is existing, and that is enough. And that story kind of resonated with me and struck me as poignant.
Sounds like Confucius. Yeah,
it could be, but great.
Yeah, it's awesome. And this is kind of how I always hope these go. It's at 1:20. I want to respect your time. We do have one more thing to do. So we're just getting into the good stuff, which means we have to have you back. It's going to be great as long as you'll come back.
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
But it's time for something a little special here. That's right. It's time for Two Truths and a Lie. Here,
I didn't know we had that. That is amazing. I love that.
Go.
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah, it was like a pandemic thing that I made when the kids were down here. I was like, come here, come say this. So we're going to play Two Truths and a Lie with Laura to get to know her a little bit better. I did prep her. I did give her heads up at the very least that this was coming. Do you need us to vamp a little, Laura, or are you ready to go?
I'm ready to go.
All right. And for those who are listening at home, if you get it right, send us your address and we'll send you some swag. We'll send you some sweet. Ooh, do I have it here? Oh, yes. Because of kids, it's all over the floor. We got some great Let's Make Awesome coasters here. Keep your desk all clean. We'll send you some stuff too, Laura. We'll get you some good supplies. But if you're at home, if you're on Facebook or YouTube, play along.
Play along. All right. So do I just tell you my 3 things?
Yeah. And I'll write them down.
Okay. So the first one is that I went to school originally to be a court reporter. Yep. I'm often asked about my vehicle because I drive a 2013 Volkswagen Rabbit. And I raced in a regatta on Lake Michigan during the pandemic. And I won.
What's a regatta?
So it's a race with boats. So catamaran, my boyfriend races catamarans, and a regatta is a sailboat race. Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
The Rabbit. I'm looking up all these things. And if you're at home, you can ask questions as well.
Google it. That's not fair, is it? No.
Oh, it's 100% fair. We have the internet. Yeah. Thanks,
to the
Al
internet.
Gore. All right, let's see. So you went to school to be a court reporter. You are often asked about your vehicle. You drive a 2013 Volkswagen Rabbit, and you raced in a regatta on Lake Michigan during the pandemic and won. That would be the pro move right there on number 3, to just change one of the details, to have it mostly true. That's the best way to lie.
Yeah.
All right, what are you guys thinking?
I'm thinking that you have a Volkswagen Rabbit, but it's a different year.
Ooh, so Max is number 2. Different year. That's a really good way to lie. We'll learn how good you are at lying.
Well, we got to guess online. Yeah. How many coasters do
Aaron
you have?
says last one. Yeah, Aaron, we've sent you stuff before, right, Aaron? We sent you a coaster, right?
If not, just come over.
Maybe, yeah, just stop by. I'll give you some glasses. All right, John, what do you think?
Man, it's tough. The regatta sounds like unexpected, but I also know that there's a lot more boat people and boat racing that takes place in this area than you might realize. So it's not. I've met a lot of people that are like, "Oh wow, you do boats and you boat race," and like, just a lot of surprise with that. I'm inclined to say the first one, just because it's like one of these things is not like the other. It's like shorter. There's less detail involved.
Yeah, there's less specifics. Yeah.
And
That's
yeah.
Ooh, and Aaron uses the coaster every day. Nice pro move.
I'm gonna go. Man, that could be though. But I'm gonna go with court reporter because I have no way of knowing what car you drive, and it seems reasonable. Maybe you'd like it, and boat racing is a thing that lots of people do in this area.
Okay.
All right, so John, you're number 1. Max, you're number 2. I guess. I mean, I'm gonna jump into it with Aaron. I'm going to go number 3 because there's a lot of details. There's like 4 things. You race in a regatta on Lake Michigan during the pandemic and won. So there's like 1, 2, 3, 4.
And
there's 4 things that could be lies.
And I won seemed like an add-on too. It did have that.
Yeah.
Dun, dun, dun.
Ooh, we got Phil. Second one.
Yes,
and
Phil is here. Amazing.
Terramana on the coaster. Here we go. I'll hook you up. You guys just come on over. We'll get you some of this. We'll drink together. That's the requirement. Okay. I think we got our votes locked in. What is the lie?
So just out of curiosity, what were let me get this right. So a couple of you voted on the Volkswagen, right? As a lie.
So that was Max. I think Max was the only one. Or sorry, Max and Phil, Savadowski Creative.
Okay. And then John voted on that, went to school to be a court reporter, right?
Yep.
And then me and Aaron were the regatta.
All right. Well, and the winner is I did actually go to school to be a court reporter, which is just hilarious to me because I have no business. Can you imagine me sitting still for an hour at all? No, it doesn't happen.
With your
and listening intently. Yeah, but I could play the piano and I could type fast. So I actually did start out studying court reporting, and I thought the law was interesting. Yeah, that is. I didn't last long. I did race in a regatta, and no, I don't drive a Volkswagen. So,
so number 2. Did you win? You won the regatta race?
Is that I do drive a 2013 Toyota Sienna. And that part usually confuses people. They're like, why are you driving the mom van? Well, I've been driving the exact same make and model since they came out with a new one in like whatever year that was, 2003 or something. I just keep buying newer ones. But the 2013 one is the most recent one. And it's a great vehicle. So, yeah. But I don't drive a Volkswagen.
Nice.
Yeah. Love it. Yeah, that was a really good specific detail you tricked us with. That was awesome. So,
we each get the different ones.
Max,
so. Well done.
Max, you get whatever you want. You can take some swag if you don't already have it. And Phil, you get a coaster.
I'll take the whole
so
liquor shelf.
You have to drink the like really old wine that's probably super alcohol-y. Yeah,
it's probably vinegar by now. You can find some use for it.
100% vinegar. Yeah. All right, let's see. That's what we got for today. Like I said, I think we're just getting into it. That's what's so much fun about this, and I appreciate Laura you coming on and just hanging out with us. Is there anything we can plug for you?
Oh gosh. Yeah. Well, I feel a little bad saying this since John's the new president of American Advertising Federation, but the American Marketing Association is doing a new series starting in January, a lunch hour series that I'll creative company sponsoring. So that's going to be fun for a few months. John, feel free to ask me to sponsor things. I'm pretty good about that. So that'll be good. And I think that's really it. I just, I want everybody to just like think about, rest and play and restoring and being good to themselves. That's really important. And it's a pleasure to talk to you. I knew it would be. And thank you all. You're wonderful. It's good to meet with you again and chat.
Yeah.
Good to meet with you.
Thank you so much. This was awesome.
All right.
And we do turn this into a podcast. So you might be listening to this as a podcast, but check it out down below if you don't already. Thanks everyone for jumping in. We'll report back when we've got somebody new on the calendar. Thanks, Laura. Have a great weekend. Enjoy the weather, you guys. Yeah. It's going to be awesome.
Absolutely. Thanks. Take care, everyone.
Good.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.